Hey, Jenny Hendricks here, Century 21 Prestige Realty. I have received several questions from buyers recently about what is earnest money. So let's talk about it. What is earnest money? Earnest money is a deposit that is offered to the seller that represents a buyer's good faith to purchase a home. The money is held so that contingencies like financing, appraisal, title search, inspections can all be completed and approved or further negotiated in some cases. Earnest money is considered a deposit on the home or is sometimes called good faith money. In most cases, earnest money is collected when the purchase contract is signed. In Utah, our purchase contract states that we can collect that up to 4 days after acceptance. So if you are local and you're in town and you're signing the purchase agreement in person, you can offer your earnest money at that point in time. If not, which is very common these days, you can just put it in the mail and it can be deposited up to 4 days after acceptance. Once deposited, the earnest money funds are held in an escrow account until closing, at which time the deposit is applied to the buyer's down payment and closing costs. So buyers, that money is always yours throughout the whole transaction, except for a few cases that we're going to talk about right now. The buyer will be able to get the earnest money back if something that was specified ahead of time in the contract goes wrong. For example, the earnest money would be returned if the house doesn't appraise for the sales price or the inspection reveals serious defects. Now, I really want to make the point that those cases have to be negotiated up front. And what we're seeing in many cases right now, because the market is so competitive, is that buyers are saying, for example, I am willing to pay an amount over appraisal. I'm not going to worry about the appraisal. So your lender is still going to order an appraisal, but if it has been negotiated into your contract that you're going to pay an amount above appraisal, then that contingency sort of goes away. It's not nearly as important as if the contract were contingent on the appraisal. So an earnest money would not be refundable if the buyer decides not to go through with the purchase for some reason that wasn't already negotiated as a contingency, or if the buyer fails to meet the timelines that are outlined in the contract. So make sure that you are aware of those timelines. My team is going to be there with you every step of the way, and we'll make sure that those deadlines are met. Okay, how much earnest money should you put down? Well, the buyer and seller can negotiate really any amount. It's often kind of a rule of thumb to put down maybe 1%. I have seen earnest money deposits that are higher than that in this market, but it's up to the buyer to determine what they want to offer out of the gate when we write up the contract. And now it's not uncommon for a seller to come back and say, that's not enough, I want an additional amount. So that's a point of negotiation in that purchase contract. Of course, the higher the earnest money amount, the more serious the buyer looks to the seller. So buyer should offer a high enough amount so that your offer looks serious, but whatever you're comfortable with. And a lot of times it depends on the type of loan you're getting as well, because some loans here locally are 100% loan to value, and so you end up getting that earnest money back at closing. It doesn't get deposited toward your down payment because there's not one. Earnest money is usually paid by a certified check, a personal check, or a wire straight into the trust account, either at your broker's bank or possibly at the title company's bank. The funds are held in that account until closing when they are applied toward your down payment and closing costs. It's important to note that escrow accounts, like other bank accounts, can have interest accruing. Although the buyer-broker agreement in Utah does specify that if there is any interest from the trust account holding your earnest money, it will go to the Utah Association of Realtors Housing Opportunity Fund, or UARHOF. The bank will kind of sweep the broker's trust accounts once a month and send that interest to the UARHOF, and the UARHOF uses that to benefit things like Habitat for Humanity, local housing projects, anything housing related where we can help benefit our local communities. Now, the last thing you need to know about your earnest money is that it does make a difference where that earnest money is deposited, okay? So if it is held in your broker's trust account, the broker can release that earnest money according to the terms of the contract. So say there's a contingency that couldn't be negotiated, it wasn't met, the terms of the contract will spell out what happens to that earnest money. And the broker can release it just upon those terms of the real estate purchase contract. Now, if your earnest money gets deposited into a title company's trust account, the rules are a little different. So in a title company's trust account, you actually need to have both the buyer and the seller's signature additionally to release that earnest money. And you can imagine that it might get a little tricky if things go sideways and maybe there's some conflict between the buyer and seller. So just know where your earnest money is being deposited and how you may get it back if the contract calls for that. So that is what you need to know about earnest money. As always, please reach out if I can be a resource for you. And if you have more questions about the contingencies involved in a transaction relative to that earnest money, take a look at this video for more details. I'm Jenny Hendricks at Century 21 Prestige Realty. We'll see you soon.